G'day students, second last of the training method videos, and in this video we're going to be talking all about plyometrics. These last two videos should be a little bit shorter than the others, so let's get straight into it about plyometrics. Before we begin, I want to remind you about two words that are absolutely critical, and I know that they're two things that quite often slip our mind, and that is the concentric phase of a contraction and the eccentric phase of a contraction. So as we can see here, concentric is when a muscle is all gathering and bunching up. Eccentric is when the muscle is producing force while lengthening. So let's have a look at the plyometric stuff. Plyometrics training uses the stretch and shortening cycle to its advantage. What we need to understand is during the eccentric part of a contraction, when a muscle lengthens, it actually has like a rubber band elasticity property about it. What it does is the muscle stores elastic energy when it is lengthening. What that means is because muscles are elastic and they can bring themselves together nice and quickly, we're actually putting to our advantage the fact that when we make our muscle movements using plyometrics, instead of just taking a muscle from its regular length and then contracting it together like a regular bicep curl, for example, we're actually taking the muscle to a more lengthened position first, so it has a greater potential of producing more force when it contracts in together using a concentric contraction. So plyometrics is all about using that stretch and contract method to its advantage to produce as much force as possible. Plyometrics has been well documented to be really beneficial when working on muscular power, which makes sense with the definition of power being explosive muscular contraction movements, quick movements. We also need to understand though that doing this style of training will help improve speed and agility of athletes as well. So plyometrics is really beneficial in producing that speed, that burst. So any endurance athlete who's going to require a speed burst at any particular time, maybe to overtake or to sprint towards a finish, they could use some plyometrics training as well. A lot of us would understand plyometrics from these diagrams here. Leaps, bounds, explosive movements, jumping over hurdles, doing some squat jumps, etc. But what we need to understand as well is that we can do push-up style upper body, we can do medicine ball slams on the ground, and we can do pushing medicine balls up to a partner who catches it above us, because each of these movements work on that same principle of lengthening a muscle and then shortening that muscle explosively quickly. If we look at this squat jump, for example, the quadriceps, the hamstring muscles. The hamstrings are being stretched, lengthened over the hip joint. The quadricep is being stretched and lengthened over the knee joint. And then as they explode, both of those muscular groups contract together in a concentric manner and explode as high as possible. When we train plyometrics, because it is explosive, we need to be wary of risk of injury, especially if we are doing this with novice or intermediate athletes. Having a good strength base is recommended, so look at the resistance training video of how to build strength prior to bringing this explosive plyometric training in. Appropriate footwear, especially if we're doing leaps and bounds and jumps, for example. And also start at a lower intensity before progressing to the higher intensity. You need a lot of rest, at least 3 minutes in between each set, to ensure that phosphate creatine stores are being put back together and that the body has time to recover so that you can get your best explosiveness out. When performed with other training methods, 2 sessions per week are sufficient in improving muscular power for this one. So I know that we've gone with frequency as 3 before, but because we do a lot of other muscle contractions, you get the same output from completing 2 sessions per week along with the rest of your training session, because it's likely that if you do a circuit session, a resistance session, which we've already spoken about, or maybe even any fartlek or interval running, those muscles are getting similar types of contractions that would deem them a third workout for that week on that fitness component. I hope plyometrics makes sense to you. Let's move on to the final